Today, welcome to Manship's Time Capsule Part 2. This is another record collection that has sat in a Johnny Walker whiskey box since the 1970s, the mid-1970s, and apparently never opened since the mid-70s when the guy stopped collecting Northern Soul. This is a really interesting story. This is a collection from Nottingham, and as you can see, beautifully kept, and every one of them is in one of these sleeves which we used to buy from W.H. Smith's and then lovingly put titles across the top and keep them in boxes like this before really nice DJ boxes were invented. And this person kept these. Now the interesting thing about it, every record here was purchased from a place called Selectadisc on Arkwright Street in Nottingham. Fortunately for the person who collected these, he was a Notts Forest fan who went down to the Forest ground every time they were at home and had to pass Selectadisc, and every time he went down there he bought records. Selectadisc was an oasis for soul records, as you can see here. This guy would buy records every Saturday that he went to see the Forest play, and not only that, he would meet people in Selectadisc from opposing teams, from if Leicester, Derby and people like that were in town, then the football fans who collected records were always in Selectadisc. Even people from Wolds and all over the country, they were going to Selectadisc to buy their soul records, and they were the specialist outlet. Now, what Selectadisc did, they had a supplier in the form of Simon Susan in Los Angeles, who was finding rare records and selling them on his mail order list, but also bootlegging records and supplying Selectadisc with all the bootlegs that he did. Now this collection here is split into three different things. I'll just run through the first bit of it first. Now this is what everybody when they started would have bought. Tamla Motown, 1974-75, he would have bought Oh Right, that was a new release in this country, but he also would have bought hits like George McRae, bit more Motown, bit of Otis Redding. Everybody needed a bit of Otis Redding. A new release Northern Soul record which would have come straight out over the Northern Soul counter. They're Northern Soul new releases. Selectadisc would have sold over the counter for, I think they were about £1.20 in those days. So here we go. This is the obvious bits of his collection. Bobby Head's Love Love Love, the reissue, and more Motown, and more the Tramps, Rescue Me, Fontella Bass, etc. So these were all the obvious records that would have been played in and around Nottingham clubs. Notts was every bit as dedicated to soul as what Manchester was, or Sheffield, and they had a big soul following. The Brit was the obvious club to go to, but before that was the Dungeon, which was on a par with the Twisted Wheel if you lived in the Nottingham area. And here you go, these are fairly common records. You know, you got Band of Gold there, which was the earliest part of his collection, I would say. And we're going into another Northern Soul record that came out in 75. That was Tony and Tyrone, Please Operator, which was a massive Wigan record. So between, I would say, 1972-75 was his prolific years, but that's when we get deeper into the collection, and we're just going past the British new releases, and we're starting to get towards the things that Simon Susan were doing on the West Coast and shipping into England. We've got an Eddie Parker there, I Love You Baby. We've got a Ronnie and Robin there, Sidra's Theme. These were the early bootlegs, and this is what the guy, it's like progress from Band of Gold and and things like that into proper Northern Soul. Now this is when Selectadisc commissioned RCA to do some reissues. There's Michael and Raymond, Man Without a Woman, which was a huge Northern Soul record at the time, and that was commissioned by RCA. RCA repressed it and Selectadisc stopped it. But more than that, I mean, we used to go into the cellar at Selectadisc, and these things would be lying around. There you go, Morris Chestnut bootleg, Too Darn Soulful, Johnny Caswell bootleg, which John Madara won't be very happy about. That was 1974-ish, and that was in Selectadisc. And after that, I mean, there's the Out of the Past label, which was a very famous bootleg label, which Selectadisc stocked nearly all of these. There's a Mel Williams, Can It Be Me? Just slide that back in there. And they're all beautifully packed in these gorgeous W.H. Smith's things. Here's a particularly good one, Otis Smith reissue, which when Selectadisc actually got Today Records to repress this, and they asked for the instrumental to be on the flip, which instrumentals at the time were king in the Northern Soul dance halls. They got the instrumental there on the back of it. That today is quite a hard record to find, to be fair, and quite wanted. And here we go, this is the sort of thing that was going through Selectadisc. We have J.J. Barnes, Please Let Me In. Now that's a bootleg of a Rick Tick record. That's made in vinyl, it should be styrene. So the bootlegs were coming in to Nottingham from the USA. Here's another bootleg. This record was one of the biggest records in the country, and still probably is one of the biggest records, oldies wise, at weekenders and things. That's Sam and Kitty, I've Got Something Good. Very hard to tell the original from the bootleg unless you know what you're doing. This is certainly a bootleg, but if you looked at it face on, and you can see there where the patina of age has got to the label and making it look very authentic. It's not, it's a bootleg, and this is the sort of thing that Selectadisc had in buckets, and people would go there from all over the country to buy their Northern Soul supplies. I'm just wading deeper into this collection as I speak, and you have a reissue there which Simon Susan actually got reissued by the original company, which went in business and out of business and changed their name to, it used to be Trans-American. They changed it to Trans because Trans-American was out of business and obviously probably bankrupt, and so they needed to change the name a little bit. That was commissioned, that's not a bootleg. And we've got certain things. These are bootlegs. These are the Out of the Past label again. That's a Chubby Checker. You just don't know. And as you see, these are bootlegs, obviously, because that came out on Coral, and they got it done on Sagittarius, and that's a bootleg. Now here you are. Here, this is from the era. These are the counterfeits. This is a counterfeit. Johnny Moore, Walk Like a Man. Now whether they tried to sell that as an original at the time, I don't know. It's a very convincing counterfeit. Again, it's vinyl and it should be styrene, and the original is styrene. And then you've got one of the most common bootlegs ever. This has come out in so many different colours. That's Gloria Jones, Tainted Love, and this is all from 1972 to 1975. The early ones are the 1972 of the hits, obviously, like Band of Gold, but here's a 1975 reissue by VJ Records, Don Thomas, Come On Train, with an instrumental on the other side, etc. So let's go deeper into this collection because it starts to get interesting. I'm delving deeper into this collection, it's getting more and more interesting. There's some reissues and bootlegs. Here's the bootleg of a big record at the Torch, Sons of Moses Soul Symphony. When they bootlegged it, they put the labels on back to front, unfortunately, and you can see the owner here has gone and changed it so he knows which side is which, and Soul Symphony is on the fat back side. the early bootlegs of David and the Giants. And here we go, is another one that Selectadisc commissioned from RCA. That's Paul Anker, Can't Help But Loving You. And that infamous bootleg label Out of the Past. And here's Susan's own little project, which was Soultown Records, a record label that was owned by Bobby Sanders in Los Angeles. Obviously got a great name, Soultown Records. He stole or borrowed the logo to make it look great, and then went and stuck the glories on it, I Worship You Baby, which was a release on USA Date. It had nothing to do with Soultown Records whatsoever, so that was a boot. This is an interesting one because this Audio Arts label, which very colourful label out of Los Angeles. This was Madeline Baker's label, and Susan went to Madeline Baker and said, we'd like nothing else to say, but we want the instrumental, you know. As I said before, instrumentals back in 1974 and 75 were absolutely monstrous Northern Soul things. So there you got the instrumental of The Incredibles, There's Nothing Else to Say, which obviously was never seen before. So let's keep going. In amongst these, there's an Eddie Foster bootleg, then it's Guest bootleg, English reissues, Manifesto bootleg. So this is a really comprehensive collection of Northern Soul. There's another nice one that was done on Susan's imagination. That was Soul Wax label. That's Melbourne Moore. That was issued on Musicor, but Susan thought it'd be great to do it on the Soul Wax label, which, yeah, gotta admit, it looks really neat and tidy, especially after 40 years of being filed away. They've got a certain feel about them that makes them look authentic. And I can do that. There's another one. That's a Capitol record. That's Thelma Houston, Baby Mine. More of the Out of the Past. Here's another one on Soul Wax. This came out on Dynamo, and there we go, Stanley Mitchell, Get It Baby. These are all stone cold classic Northern Soul reissues and bootlegs, mostly bootlegs. See that here's one. This is a counterfeit, very naughty one, because they've used the label completely, and over the years people have thought this was an original, but you can see by the massive dead wax there, which is a bit of bad mastering, to be honest with you, which will make this bit here a tighter groove and a lower volume. You don't see that very much. It's quite a hard one, but Selectadisc was selling those from behind the counter down in the cellar. So we've got all these. Let's see what else is interesting in here. Oh, there's an interesting one. That was Johnny Bragg. That was the bootleg. That would have been about 1975-ish, I would have thought. Here's a counterfeit, which has had everybody we'll do the Time of Kangaroo Down thing. There's a counterfeit, a vinyl one, which for some reason they decided to try and replicate the Columbia Matrix stamping in, but made a right mess of it because it doesn't look anything like it. It looks it's stamped in, but it's not the original Matrix. It's a copy of the original Matrix. And we've even got things like Invitation Skiing in the Snow. Here's an interesting one, because this is when they commissioned a MGM to do them some special products, and there's Dottie Cambridge, Cry Your Eyes Out. They also did Robert Banks on that label, and the Velours on that label. So they were in touch, as well as getting bootlegs from Los Angeles, they were getting originals from the actual companies themselves. There's another bootleg from LA, but these were flooding Selectadisc. here's an interesting one because people are still confused about this. That's a bootleg. That's a counterfeit from LA, and you can see the cheeky buggers actually put a little tiny H stamp in there to make it look original. But if you compare that with the original one, this background is all the wrong colour, and it's also the wrong type of vinyl. And likewise, here we're doing good counterfeits here. That's quite a hard counterfeit to find. That's Righteous Brothers Rat Race. So what you have here, oh, this is even more interesting. This is Elsie Strong Just Ask Me, which is another version of the Lennis Guest record. That's the bootleg. There is quite a rare original which has the 3W matrix in the dead wax. They've tried to copy it, but again made a massive mess of it and make it look nothing like what it should be. So that's the bootleg. So as you can see, Selectadisc was absolutely full of these things coming from America. There's Bobby Treetop, Wait Till I Get to Know You. There's the bootleg of Butch Baker, which was a massive record at the Cats. And here we go, there's another one which gets confused sometimes. There's a counterfeit of Gwen and Ray. If that was an original, it should be very, very thin RCA style vinyl, and this is thick and chunky and horrible and not authentic in any way. I'll just flick through these quickly, then I'll get to the... We've got the Sherry's, we've got the Ann Perry, we've got Debbie Dean's, Connie Clark, the first bootleg of that, etc. So I think this is an absolutely fabulous time capsule of 1972 to 1975. But this is the bits I'm pulling out now. We're at the end of his collection, where there's the Incredibles, there's nothing else to say. That's a counterfeit, as you'd expect from Selectadisc at the time. But here we go, here we start to go. We start to get originals. So I did know at the time that that Simon Susan was sending reissues, bootlegs, but also original records that were lying around that he didn't really think he could sell through his mail order. There's one, Voice Box, I Want It Back, Our Love, Your Love. Really good record, that, and that was picked up by this guy. It wasn't a big Northern Soul record at the time, but he picked it up. The Carstairs, which has gone through their hands. Now let's get to the interesting things. Not only was Selectadisc being supplied with counterfeits, reissues, bootlegs, and also they were commissioning their own reissues from the big companies like MGM, RCA, Decca. Here's one from Decca, which came into Selectadisc in huge quantities. They all had the smaller cracked up overview and not the larger one with 2 lines. Now apparently Selectadisc asked for that to be repressed by Decca, and they said no need, because we have loads in the warehouses which we're drilling holes in and chucking out as cutouts. So a whole bunch of these came into Selectadisc and were sold the same price as a bootleg, but they are originals. But also what came in Selectadisc at the time, this guy bought for the price of a bootleg, is an original Moses Smith, which I find that odd for that to come into Selectadisc in amongst all the reissues. And here's another one by the Furies. This is not a very easy record to find. If I Didn't Have a Dime, it's a great record, but nothing to do with Northern Soul in the period of 72 to 75. But he bought it because he liked the other Furies record, but that was also in Selector. And an original of Charles Wright. Even more interesting, an original of The Ethics, Standing in the Darkness. Now Standing in the Darkness was a big record at the Cats, and that's come to Selectadisc as an original. Joanne and Gale's Meet Me Halfway, not to be confused with Lily Bryant's, it's a different record. There's an original Wendy Rennie, an original Landslide, which came into Selectadisc, you know, in quite large quantities, but try finding that in America, it's nearly impossible. I don't think I've ever found one in America. They all came to England. Now this came in into Selectadisc with all the bootlegs and that. A World Without Sunshine, Sandra Phillips, also a nice record. A Volcanoes with the blue background and the blue text. Great record. The guy said himself that was his favourite out of the whole bunch. Was his favourite record was the Volcanoes, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's an original. Even more surprising, now this is the surprise of the bunch, between 1972 and 1973 he went in Selectadisc and bought the Icemen. That's an original. Now that 4 years ago was an extremely rare record and very, very sought after. There was a handful found in recent times which has devalued it by about half probably, but still, what a great record to find, to go into Selectadisc on a Saturday on your way to watch Notts Forest play football, and you can pick that up for £1.20. Nearly everything was £1.20 in those days. United 4, you're putting me on. Now then, Selectadisc got Atco to reissue this. These all came into Selectadisc, and Excess Trek, at the time the biggest, most wanted record in the country. It was reissued. Now it's quite hard to find, and you can see here that the instrumental side was the most important side. Maybe today the vocal side is the more important side, debatable, but as you can see, these came into Selectadisc as a reissue on the orange, and today quite a sought after record. And there's a weird one. This is a Donald Hite record, which, you know, it's not particularly common, but he bought that because it was an import and it looked interesting. I'm just getting to the end of this now. The surprising ones: Tolling the Mar on Buddha, Edwin Starr, My Weakness Is You. Now this one, which was actually remade by Jerry Williams, he re-recorded it to meet the demand, if you ask me. This is a 1973 re-recording. A friend of mine went in to buy this from Selectadisc because it had just been re-recorded, reissued. Everybody wanted it, slightly different take, but he got given an original. So you go into Selectadisc, there's quite a lot of originals floating about there which came to Selectadisc, shipped from America in amongst reissues. Here's another one that was sitting in there, the original. Come on over to my side, Big Torch record. Barbara Mills, that's a bootleg, this one. There's absolutely no Nashville Matrix in that. I can't see anything to suggest that actually came from Hickory itself. Yeah, that was a big record in its day. Saxy Russell, that's a bootleg. Then you had things like that, Million Seller, which is obviously a big reissue in America. They bought that, opened the door to your heart. But then, in amongst it, is the Ambassadors' I Dig You Baby and Storm Warning. What a great record to find in the middle of all these reissues. There we go. Well, there you have it. Manship's Time Capsule of Northern Soul. That's part 2. If I ever lucky enough to find another time capsule that's been kept in its entirety, I will do it again from any era. This is 1972 to 1975, from a person who was far more interested in Notts Forest Football Club than he was Northern Soul Records. He kept these, he bought these, he treasured them, and hasn't really even been in the box for many decades, but still loves the music. There you go.